Why can't BTS's Jungkook still forget the moment at Tokyo airport, when so many months have passed? What exactly happened there that made him so emotional? Click through, read to the end, and leave your opinion. This story could change the way you see Jungkook forever as the night descends rapidly in Tokyo. Who would have thought that a meeting of a few minutes could sink so deeply into the heart of an idol who has faced millions of cheers and camera flashes throughout his life? But for Jungkook, the night wasn't just an ordinary trip. He never expected that when he set foot in Tokyo airport after such a long time, there would be an invisible hug that lasted longer than the applause of any concert. A hug from the Japanese army that came without an official invitation, without a stage, without a script, with only raw, pure, surprising love. What exactly are they shouting? What did Jungkook see from behind his mask and sunglasses that made his chest so tight that he decided not to say a word all the way from the airport to the hotel? Why did he immediately lock himself in his room that night and just turn on the same song over and over again? A song that wasn't even on his playlist before? One thing is certain. Something happened at the Tokyo airport that has never been clearly revealed by any media, something that only Jungkook and those present knew about. But little clues began to emerge since Jungkook mentioned Tokyo in his Weverse broadcast a few days later, in an unusual tone of voice. "There are things I will never forget there," he wrote in Korean that was quickly translated by Army International. "And I don't know if I deserve it." Is this about a huge banner that didn't get caught on camera because it was forbidden to enter by airport officials? Or is it about a fan with special needs who managed to touch Jungkook's hand for just a second before being guarded backwards? There are rumors circulating about the crying voice of a grandmother who keeps calling Jungkook's name, not as an idol, but as the son she prays for every night. Is this really happening? This story does not stop there. Hours after the incident, Japanese netizens reported that they saw Jungkook pause in the hotel hallway and stare out the window for more than 15 minutes without moving. One of the hotel staff, who declined to be named, admitted that Jungkook asked for one unusual request that night: a small paper copy of a note that fans had left in the hotel lobby. A note that wasn't even written in fancy ink, just in regular pencil on a scrap of old school books. The note reads, "I tried to kill myself once, but your song Still With You saved me. And today I live to greet you at the airport." How could one possibly forget such a sentence? Jungkook was used to hearing fan stories, but that night was different. There is no stage, no highlights, just human and human connected in a silence louder than the sound of any concert. He didn't even get a chance to reply directly. But since that night, every appearance Jungkook makes on camera shows a deeper look, a quieter voice at the mention of the word "thank you." Something has changed a few days later. In an off-record interview with one of the backstage photographers who knew Jungkook from the beginning of his debut, he revealed what was bothering him. "I saw him staring at a small photo before going on stage. I think it's his family." But as it turned out, it was a photo sent in by fans who welcomed her to Tokyo. He stared at her for a long time, and while performing, he almost cried while singing the last verse. The public doesn't know this. Even many soldiers themselves have not heard that detail. But now everything starts to make sense. Suddenly, the song she sang on the Variety show changed. More of a song about separation, sacrifice, and loss. Suddenly, her Instagram posts turned more reflective, with captions like, "You gave me more than I could ever give back." And recently, in his live broadcast, without context, Jungkook said, "I wish I could go back to Tokyo. Not to perform, but just to say something I didn't get to say." The words made the fans ask, what has not yet had time to say? To whom? And why is Jungkook still keeping it for so long? The answer may never be entirely clear. But one thing's for sure, the fans at Tokyo airport that night weren't the only ones giving a standing ovation. They give hope. They give life. And for Jungkook, it wasn't a celebration of his fame. It was a reminder that in such a noisy and stressful world, there is still a small space where he can be the real Jungkook. A man who once felt empty, but now knows that his presence in the world means a lot to someone. And for those of us reading this, perhaps now is the time to ask, when you cheer for an idol, do you know how deep the echo of that voice goes into his soul? For Jungkook, the answer is obvious. We can't forget the airport. And, apparently, he doesn't want to forget it, even as Jungkook wept silently backstage at the concert in Osaka. According to one former logistics staffer who was there that night, not a single manager approached him. Instead, they sent a message via walkie-talkie. Let it go first. Sometimes it helps with exposure. The cold words were spoken as if they were not talking about a human being, but a marketing object. Jungkook was holding an old photo of himself and Taehyung, a photo he had previously kept in his wallet before being forcibly taken away by the stylist so as not to be seen by backstage cameras. When fans cheered at the sight of Taehyung and Jungkook staring at each other on stage, what they didn't know was that 20 minutes earlier, they had been instructed through earpieces not to stand too close, so as not to trigger an unwanted buzz. One of the audio producers revealed that there is a voice filter that is automatically set up to reduce the clarity of the microphone when the two names laugh together too close. The reason? Avoid overly emotional footage. But it is precisely the laughter that is the purest form of honesty that has been silenced. Their freedom of speech is systematically limited, not by the rule of law, but by the invisible power of brand protection. In the end of 2022 internal content meeting, there was a specific discussion about how Taehyung shouldn't have uploaded a photo with an overly melancholic tone, as it was considered not in line with the company's optimistic message. While Jungkook, who once uploaded a video of himself singing an indie song whose lyrics contained the phrase, "I'm tired of being the person you're proud of," was immediately asked to delete it just 2 hours later, accompanied by threats that such expressions could destabilize stocks, shares, enterprise value. That's what they are desperately guarding. Even if what has to be sacrificed is the mental health of two human children who have grown up in their system since adolescence. A former personal security staffer claimed to have witnessed Taehyung escape from the briefing room after hearing the statement that "your cold image is the best-selling product now." He hit the mirror in the bathroom until his hand was bleeding and was only handled with wet wipes because there were no medical teams in the area at the time. "We can't talk about the incident," the staffer said, because they think internal emotions are not public consumption. And all this makes many people ask, since when should artists not be hurt? Since when is loving a teammate considered harmful to the brand? Since when are tears considered an economic threat? Even more horrifying, according to one source who worked on a long-term management contract, Taehyung and Jungkook were once asked to sign an explicit, non-personal closeness clause in certain promotional projects. That is, if they show too close a relationship publicly, even if only with ambiguous body language, they can be considered in violation of the contract of cooperation of a particular brand and should receive a financial penalty. Photo evidence of the draft agreement circulated among underground fan sites, but never made it to mainstream media due to legal pressure from the agency. The fans started raising petitions, not just demanding transparency, but demanding an apology. They refuse to be consumed emotionally while the idols they love are forced to hide their pain, hide their bonds, hide their humanity. They no longer ask, "Is this true?" but "How much longer will this lie be maintained?" And now, those sounds turned into waves. Netizens began to unpack the old videos, matching the interaction time with the promotion schedule, comparing Taehyung's expression before and after being summoned to the management room, and found a sinister pattern, that every moment where their closeness began to grow publicly was always followed by a period of far-fetched distance. The big question now is, how far will HYB go to protect the illusion they created? And even more terrifying, how deep are the wounds that Taehyung and Jungkook have buried? And when Jungkook, in a low voice in one of his international interviews, said, "I don't belong to anyone," that phrase was cut from the final broadcast that was released to the public. No clarification, no defense, just vanished. Just like how many backstage footage showing the emotional closeness between her and Taehyung also vanished. Even in documentaries that they pay for with sweat and pain, many narratives are structured not on the basis of truth, but on the basis of control. Truth has long been a threat, not a goal. Several former employees of the content production department admitted that the internal surveillance system of the two members was not like that of the other members. There are special daily reports that discuss Taehyung and Jungkook's personal movements and habits, especially when they are abroad or get some time off. Not for security reasons, but for image preservation reasons, so as not to appear unstructured content from their too free interaction. In other words, if Taehyung and Jungkook laugh too long, sit too close, or even just talk too deeply, then that's a risk. The risk is not for them, but for companies that fear losing control of public perception. More surprisingly, a confession from a longtime staffer who now works outside the industry reveals that there was a time when the agency even considered moving one of them to a different sub-unit group project, not for artistic reasons, but because of internal pressure to have their personal interactions reduced for the sake of business stability. When it was tacitly rejected by both members, they were referred to in internal records as creative liabilities. Very cruel words to two human beings who have given their lives for the success of the group. There are also reports that when Jungkook wanted to make a song about loss and pressure, he was instructed to put in a positive spirit, so that the song could pass the curation of the brand partnership. He refused. The song was never released in its original form, so it was with a poem Taehyung wrote for his late childhood friend, whom he once wanted to recite in V Live. It is forbidden, not because the content of his poetry was inappropriate, but because it was too deep, too personal, too prone to attract the sympathy of the masses emotionally. HYB doesn't want sympathy. They want numbers, statistics, endorsement, and in all this, both remain silent. Shut up, but speak in an invisible language. I view. Touch at a glance. A smile that disappears too quickly. Videos posted and then deleted. Words are half written on social platforms. It was a scream ignored by the system, but could never escape the eyes of the army who were really paying attention. Now, when all this began to surface, the reaction of the management was still the same: silence. They know, the longer they are silent, the greater the speculation. But maybe that's what they choose. Let everything sink into itself by time and the news cycle. They forgot that the fans this time are not talking about promotions or comebacks. They talk about the right of two human beings to breathe uncontrollably, to speak without fear, to love, laugh, cry, and live with complete autonomy. And the irony? All this happens not outside, but inside the house where they are supposed to be safest, their own agency. Jungkook once came up with the idea to insert a hidden message in his solo choreography, not for the fans, not for the media, but for himself and people who can only understand him correctly. However, as soon as the script of the movement got to the top of the management table, he was called and warned that choreography is not a place for personal symbols, let alone emotionally ambiguous ones. He came out of the meeting room without a sound, just looking straight ahead with a blank stare. In the next practice session, she continued to dance her own choreographed version before finally being asked to repeat from the beginning. The rehearsal cameras were turned off for 37 minutes at that time. I don't know what happened in that closed room, but after that, Jungkook didn't talk to anyone for 2 days. Meanwhile, Taehyung is putting together a short script that he wants to produce with his old friend, an independent director who has now won a European Film Festival award. But the collaborative proposal was rejected on the grounds that outside cooperation is irrelevant to Taehyung's current positioning. Even though it is precisely because of his wild ideas, he can become a symbol of a true artist in the world of idols that is completely constrained. In a private chat, the staff who handled the document admitted that the script was considered too honest and exposed many dark sides of an idol's life. Some sentences in the script have now leaked and spread among fans. One of the most painful passages reads, "People demand my smile like they're paying to see a cute doll. But when I cry, they call me excessive." That sentence is directly linked to one of the concert sessions where Taehyung was caught on camera holding back tears while singing the last part of the group's ballad song. The video used to go viral because it was considered moving, but now it is seen in a different way, more cutting and more painful. And now, the most brutal confession came from one of the former staff of the security department, who was once part of the personal escort unit for several members. He stated that there was once a written prohibition against letting Taehyung and Jungkook sit next to each other on long flights abroad. Even in some concert sessions, their positions are arranged so that they are not too often in one frame, which can cause expectations that are difficult to control. It is not only their privacy that is regulated, but even physical contact, body position, and gestures as small as a touch become the object of surveillance. This is not just artistic restraint, but a complete invasion of basic human rights. More egregiously, there were claims that some senior staff were internalized to provoke an emotional distance between the two. By inserting fake gossip, scheduling them on different schedules, or assigning different assistants to each solo project so they can't discuss each other's projects. One of them even said, "We were tasked with keeping their emotional distance without making them realize they were being separated." It's as if true friendship is a sin in a system that only calculates value. As the rumors grew, one of the former promotional content editors mentioned that there was footage of Jungkook's personal interview that had never been published until now. When asked if there was anything he missed most